We are back. We're doing our heart series here on Healthy Living. I am joined by Mimi Jackson. Thank you for joining us. We're here at the Cardiac Rehab Center, and it's really pretty impressive. Talk to me a little bit about, from what I understand, once the procedure is finished, you actually go to the patient to do evaluations. Can you share a little bit about your role?
Yes. After they have heart surgery, the doctor would refer them to us, and it's my job to go upstairs and talk with them and their family and encourage them to do the cardiac rehab exercise and education program. The statistics show that people will do better. Their mortality will be better if they are in a cardiac rehab exercise program.
It's really interesting, Mimi, because I think had I just come out of surgery, I would be very apprehensive, and scared. Is part of your job educating them to be comfortable with it?
Absolutely. To feel comfortable, to understand their restrictions, their movement for their chest, and just establish that good rapport with somebody. And
what does cardiac rehab actually look like? Is it different for every patient? Is it an individualized model?
It is individualized for the patient's needs, but the core of cardiac rehab would be aerobic exercise that helps the heart and the body improve. And then the education piece is also very, very important.
We are back on Healthy Living, and yes, you recognize this young man now. Dr. Kellerman is joining us, and it's been fun to do a series with you. We started out talking about prevention, and then we've talked about signs and symptoms. We've had the opportunity to go into the operating room. We've interviewed nurses in the cardiac cath lab, so we have a real flavor and feel. We were just talking, we talked to Jen about what it's like to be a perfusionist. And so we're sort of coming full circle through this whole entire process of cardiac thoracic surgery, and it's absolutely fascinating. And here's what I've learned: the more I know, the more I want to know. And that's where you have been so excellent in sharing with you. We're now at the point, we're here at the Cardiac Rehab Lab. So I'd like to find out, we just spoke with Mimi Jackson, who goes to the patient's room to kind of do an assessment. If we start there, the patient has had their surgery, what's sort of the next tact or procedure that you begin and take?
So we're finishing up the inpatient hospital course, and so that's an exciting time. So patients are getting ready to go home, resume their normal activities of daily living, and get on with their life.
Are they feeling pretty good at that point?
So yes and no. So it's a scary transition. So it's exciting. You're leaving the hospital, everything's going well, but it's a totally new step. And so that's one reason we start the referral basis in the hospital, so that it's taken care of. There's no thinking about it. We get the assessment set up, and then when we start it and what the exact program is will be individualized
according to what the person has had.
Exactly.
Correct. What do you like to recommend for exercise? Is it weight? Is it cardiovascular? Is it aerobic? Well, that was the word I was searching for.
Well, the first thing is we want to get people doing the normal activities of daily living.
Okay, so let's start.
And so a lot of the things are geared around that. So aerobics is a key to cardiac fitness, but also just how you go about moving, going up and down stairs, getting in and out of chairs. So some of the rehab activities will focus on
activities of daily living.
Exactly.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have a team that actually come in and do that? Is that part of the cardiac rehab team?
Yes, exactly.
And so from that point on, you'll refer. Can I also self-refer here?
Yes.
Okay.
But we have it built in, hardwired into our order sets, so we have 100% referral rate. So you won't have to self-refer, but you could self-refer.
From the time someone actually has surgery, is there then a process for how often you see them, signs and symptoms? Is there an educational component piece to what you do, and what does all that look like?
So there's definitely education. Education starts before surgery. It continues during the inpatient stay and afterwards. So typically after the patient leaves the hospital, they're sort of ending their relationship with me. So the relationship with the surgeon is short term, but the relationship with their cardiologist and primary care doctor continues lifelong. So I see everybody routinely about 2 weeks following surgery and possibly again in another 2 weeks after that. But most patients don't continue to see me.
What are you looking for when you're actually evaluating your patients post-surgery?
Well, we want to make sure their wounds are healing, that
Okay.
their cardiac function, everything we set out to do, we accomplished. And we want to see, you know, how they're reintegrated into their life. So people who have cardiac surgery may be in their 50s or 60s, but a lot of people are in their 80s.
Okay.
So they're coming to a transitional point in their life in terms of independent living. And so often that's part of the assessment. And, you know, the surgery is a big event. It pulls together family. And it's often a time for reassessment of how they want to continue going forward.
And then once you have seen them post-surgery, 2 weeks, then another 2 weeks, do they come back at all? Or you basically their relationship with you is,
That completes
we
their
love you,
surgical
thank
course.
you very much, but
Exactly. I'm not looking to become a long-term part of their life.
exactly, and we don't, and we love that. And then they go back to their cardiologist.
Yes.
What's the typical time that people do cardiac rehab? Or I guess what I'm really thinking is am I looking at lifestyle changes? And why is that important?
Well, it may or may not be a change, but we hope it's a continued way of life that focuses on activity and healthy living. And the amount of time someone spends in cardiac rehab depends on their interest level. Sometimes they graduate to other types of activities with friends, family, or just on their own at another facility. And sometimes people lose interest in it.
Well, one of my questions has always been, why is cardiac rehabilitation called cardiac rehabilitation? And that is, what is it, how is it different than just a workout regimen?
Well, I think the biggest difference is the trainers down here have a very specific knowledge of what they went through.
Okay.
And in that acute period following surgery, say the first 3 months, they're aware of what they need to do to get back to their baseline and without hurting themselves.
And what about any kind of monitoring or
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
that's the other reason we have this actually within the hospital. So they're carefully monitored by the trainers, and if anything should happen, we're physically attached to the hospital.
One of the things that I've noticed is that they all are wearing, have EKGs, or do they have?
Yeah, telemetry monitors.
Yes, talk to me about those. What are those?
So that monitors their heart rate and
Okay.
rhythm, and so we see if there's any unusual occurrences there. Mostly there's not, but one type of arrhythmia called atrial fibrillation happens in 20 to 30% of people following surgery. Usually if it were to happen, it happens a little sooner, but if that were to happen, they would detect that, or any other types of problems.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. So they're down here, and then they're put on this, I guess, regiment, if you will. Then do you graduate from cardiac rehab and then go on to just continue those activities of daily living?
Well, I think you get past your acute recovery period.
Okay.
And so now you're like you and me. And so
Right.
the question is, what exercise regimen fits into your life best? Now you've kind of understood the importance, we've given you some instruction, you've got back to baseline, and how do you want to go forward?
So when you say back to baseline, once a heart muscle has been damaged, and I continue to try to strengthen it.
So I think there's a couple things. One is your heart.
Okay.
So our goal in cardiac surgery right now is to not only maintain your heart function, but improve it so that you're in better condition than you were before surgery. But you also need to...
I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, you're not just repairing, you want my heart to be better, stronger.
Yes. So we want that, but we have to build up to that because the operation and everything you've been through bringing you to surgery is kind of a setback. So you need to recover from that event and also get your nutrition level up and all of that to where it needs to be.
I'm sure that you hear a million questions. Is there one outstanding question that people have about doing the cardiac rehab?
No.
No.
I would say one of the things that we've come to understand better in medicine in the last years is the concept of frailty. And frailty is just what the word means, and we try to put numbers on that and do different ways. But people come to, when they're ill, they become more frail. When they're older, they become more frail, and that's different in everybody's circumstance. And so depending on how frail they are, depends on the type of activities they can do and how we build them up.
And what's interesting about that is I use the word vitality a lot. It's almost from frail to vital again.
Exactly.
It's a nice transition. Thank you. We'll be right back here on Healthy Living. Stay with us, please.